Okay, thanks for coming. And also thank you to our sponsors. One of my favorite sponsors being in the room. I'll be talking a little bit about Ronald's environment in the next sessions regarding what we did with online training. But also, of course, Karen, who came from Microsoft Learning. We've got the people from Beams. And I'm not going to try to pronounce it either, but we know this is Sami behind it, and I think he's done a pretty damn good job about this summit. It's certainly very nice to see all of you guys every single time. We're kind of a little club that keeps on meeting in those strange places in the world, which is nice. Okay, graphics, animation in slides. What do you think of Marc? You love your Marc? It works. Okay, couple of slides. Any idea who that company might be? Very simple, very to the point. Okay, I had to redo the slide, but you can recognize the gentleman. I'm not wearing a turtleneck today, but very typical. Just the information that you need. Then you've got other companies. Indeed. I really wonder why we didn't sell more of Windows 8. It's actually a serious slide, yeah. It's a screen copy of it, but I believe it was either the SKU list or something like that. It was for partners. So I think you understand the importance of trying to get our message across as simply as possible. Let's be honest, I don't think I'm a particularly fascinating person. I don't think that what I'm telling is that great, so my slides better help me, because we are trying to explain some really tough stuff. I mean, if you talk about, one of the courses I did recently was the 412, you know, the advanced solutions, ADFS, ADRMS. Those are really difficult topics to talk about, so we need all the assistance that we can get. Let's go through a couple of the basics that, throughout time, I've kind of figured helped me a little bit in my job. And maybe what I should start with is, how many of you strictly use Marc, or have you developed your own slide decks? Who does their own slide deck? How often is it I see a couple of, I'm going to take that sign as being about 5 to 10%, and I'm going to take that sign up to 50%. Is that a fair assessment? Okay, yeah, I can read MCTs. 90%? 100%? Do you want to go take my, okay. Let me deal with a couple of the first things before we go into graphics or animations or anything of the sort. Start with a template. It is the same thing that you probably see with Word, where people do not use styles, and whenever they need to change something, they need to reformat the entire environment. So start with your template, work on it, and from that point on, it's going to make life much easier. As I point out, if it's just a blank slide, and I've seen a number of presentations where it's just black text on a white slide, that pretty much says, hey, I didn't really care to do anything for you guys. More importantly, actually over half of us are independent. So it's quite important to define ourselves, to define a brand, to put your own logo, put something that they will recognize your slide. Obviously here, Sami gave us this template for the MCT Summit. I don't know if we got other presenters here. Ronald, did you change the template? Okay. Anyone else is presenting? Did you change the template? Denise? A teeny bit. Okay. So that's the first thing that you're going to start with. Okay. A couple of things that I use the templates for. Let me get out of the slide here. And I'm not sure that I'm going to keep it, but every single presentation that I do starts with this hidden slide, with a disclaimer, kind of a copyright. Says what the slide is for, what you're allowed to do, And I keep the copyright, and if you want to use it, how you should use it. Does that protect me? But at least we're clear. And then I'm going to go into change the headers and the footers so that when people do a printout, most people forget about going and changing the different masters. So putting your headers and footers so that where if you now print this, you will remember what the title was, when it happened, and so forth, so on. Let me just go quickly on the master here. A couple of things I did. I removed a number of the slides. I tend to use, as you will see later on, very often the two-sided ones. I think the original font was 16.5, and I've moved that now to 36. I can't see as well as I used to, and I expect some of you are in the same situation as I am. So use that information to put a disclaimer, to get additional information. I also put that in the file properties so that it's part of the comment. The title is put in there. And that's the first thing you should start with when you create your slides. Second thing, transitions. First animation. You're going to move from one slide to another. Now, there's definite case of less is more. Okay. 0 is not enough, okay? There is some limit to the notion of less is more. So I would say that I suggest using at least 2, and you'll understand why the 2. The way I go about it, I tend to take something very light, just a fade between regular slides. You don't want to jar them, you don't want to shock them, okay? And the second transition I use is the gallery option as we move to different sections, because as you'll see, the slide will move and kind of tell the students, okay, we're done. We're moving to something new. Get ready for some new information. If you want to take one of the big transition, then use it at the beginning or at the end to kind of say, we're starting. I'm using Vortex very often for the beginning on that sort of thing. Gallery, sure. You know, you have to tell this information to those people that are spending a lot of money putting signs on buses and trains, because they're wasting their money in that case. Okay. Good. Okay, first things, graphics. So we saw with the Apple slide how a graphic can clearly explain that, hey, there's more stuff there in the same space. You can see more, we can put more information, it's going to be clearer. Let's have a look at this. Both of those slides were on the screen for 1 second. Can you tell me what they were relating to? Wile E. Coyote. PowerShell, the first one didn't see. Okay. This is actually, we shouldn't put anyone to shame, but anyone's given the course, the PowerShell course 10325? Okay, pretty much the dream team of PowerShell. I mean, if you have to think of the right person to create a PowerShell course, Don Jones, Craig Shields, technical reviewer Thomas Lee, you can't really get much better than that. Okay, I much prefer the community version of it. Why? The slides, the way the system goes through, okay, it's outside of that a very good course, but too much to read. Okay. That's a second slide, which goes by quickly. It's actually one I used during a presentation during a Tech Days. But as you can see, you didn't get a chance to read the text, but just the Wile E. Coyote, help, we get the idea. Why? It's actually faster for us to process. We don't have to read everything. And we tend to use the symbology to attach with a concept. So it serves as a mnemonic technique. Every slide should therefore have a graphic. The converse is not true. There are a number of presentations, very good presentations, where they don't put any text whatsoever on the slide. You will see that on a number of the presentations I do, I just include a little graphic wherever, just so that people can follow where we're going along. And that's the case with this particular one. So once you started working with graphic, your next step is indeed going to go, well, let's make moving graphics. Let's do animations. Okay. Who's done any animations for their PowerPoints? Cool. Great. Why isn't Microsoft why isn't Microsoft Lex hiring you guys? No. They've improved a little bit, but it's always been a bit of my regret. There's no higher production in the mock slides. Let's take an example of a slide that I tend to do regularly in different presentation. This is about the install part of a product. In this particular case, it's a System Center product. And the idea is, instead of going through a demo that's going to take an hour, we just go through the different screens. Okay? And the system is going to go through the different screens, kind of move on, look at the different stuff. Oops, I've got one slide which is the other way around. Then that hides the other ones. Bummer. And it continues, and it continues, and I think there's something like 16 different screenshots on this stuff. Okay, so I need to repair that slide, or I want to move something. What I would like to do is actually, there are certain screens, for example, service accounts, or the database storage, or the prerequisite. I would like to be able to stop the slide there, so I can talk about it, and then move on through the other ones a bit faster through the process. The problem I have with that is, if I look at that slide, this is what it looks as far as the animation. Everyone is familiar with the animation pane? Okay. This one is not too bad. Can you see which picture is in the wrong position? Yeah. Okay. The number does help. But if you're talking about an animation which is a bit more complex, it can be a bit difficult. And going to this one and saying, okay, that's the one where I want to do a click versus a after previous, picture 8 doesn't tell me much. So let's have a look now at the second version of this one, and you can see that's been corrected. Notice anything regarding the different steps? Yes, they're numbered. And they have a text of what they represent. Okay? It's a little button that very often people are not aware of, but if I come on my slide and I go on the select here, you have something called the selection pane. And what the selection pane will allow you to do is it will allow you to select every single item that is on the page and then work on it. Okay, first step. Second, I can rename it. That helps a lot. Lastly, which one is it? Well, what I can do is I can say hide all, and I think it was SQL instance I was trying, and it just showed that one. And I can then move through the different slides and try to figure out which one is which. Once I'm done, I can do a show all, and obviously I can use the selection pane along with the animation. So once I've selected something, put a fade animation or a transient animation of things. First things first, start with renaming and defining, grouping the different parts, the objects that you're going to work with on the system. If I go to this one now, as you can see, it'll go through the different steps that are not really interesting. Need to stop to that one, because here I'm talking about the different feature. The slide is called features, and I can explain how you would use for the web console separately from the management server and so forth, so on. Then the slide goes on and says, okay, it installs in default path. Ooh, prerequisite, be careful. You'll have a list of the different prerequisites that you need to fulfill. If you don't have them, the system will warn you you'll need to rerun the install on it. Okay, we go on. Then, am I adding this server to a management group, Or is this creating a new management group? I want to stop on that slide. EULA, no one wants to stop on the EULA. And then the database. Explain, this was going to be my chance to explain a little bit difference between the data warehouse and the operational database. And where I can now talk a little bit about the size that I want to define initially and the path. For example, don't put it in the C drive as it's doing currently here. Now, once we've explained this one, next time I can just slide through, because for the data warehouse, they know it's the same pretty much graphic. We move on. Second step is the console. So explain that we need to have a default website and whether we want to enable SSL. Once again, the slide is going to stop there. Authentication, don't care. Account services, meh. Do I want to improve? And then I get a summary. This is the selections I have. And tell them this is the last time you get to change your selection. So watch, read it, be careful, make sure you've made everything correctly, and then we move on and continue. Show the progress, and then show the final results with, yeah, it installed. Okay. Pretty simple animation. However, with 16 different screenshots that overlap over each other, if you do not pre-select and rename them, it can make it quite difficult. So the first step when you create an animated slide is to open up the selection pane, rename the different objects, reorder them. That's one thing I did not show. There, the selection pane shows you the objects as they will overlap each other. And you've probably encountered the problem where you're selecting something and you have to bring forward, bring forward, oops, move back, move back, move back, move all the way back. No, that's too far away. No, okay. No, you just drag and drop. And I showed you how we can hide them to highlight the one we want. Another animated slide. Did that for a disaster recovery presentation on Exchange 2010 at the time, I think. Who's giving classes on SQL, Exchange, Active Directory, Nearly Access, anything? I mean, okay. So everyone finds themselves explaining what a transactional database is, how a transactional database is fault tolerant, the notion of the log files versus the database. Is there a good slide in the mock that explains that well? There used to be an animation in the SQL 7, it was SQL 7, that, yeah. There are a couple of things like that. So what I did is I redid the systems and basically explaining that as messages or transactions come in, they start writing to the log. And after a certain amount of time, we'll do a checkpoint. So we read on the log what's taking place, and we're writing it to the database. And I'm going to continue, and I'm writing and committing to the stuff. The checkpoint is, oops, whoa. Yeah, someone needed the power plug for the vacuum cleaner or for a fridge for the beer or anything like that. Okay, so we have a power outage. We've got a failure or anything like that. How do we deal with this? Well, I'm going to restore. The system, the checkpoint is going to look at all the committed transactions, write them to the database, and then what happens to the ones that did not make it? They're never going to commit. So we need to roll back. A bit simpler than explaining it by hand, isn't it? Now, a couple of things regarding when you make one of those animated slides. Follow the process. Probably 80% of what we present deals with a particular process. Something happens, then something happens, then maybe something happens. So it makes our storytelling that much easier. We're just following the story. Show students what they do not see. It's going to be very easy to tell them there's a log file and things like that, but they're not going to look at the data go into the log file. It's conceptual. There are a number of concepts that we're dealing with, Active Directory, things like that. You can't really see. That's how it works inside. So make a graphic. Demonstrate it. If I go back, by the way, to that slide, notice how much text there is to graphic ratio. barely any text. What did I do? I put a complete dark transparency slide on top to show an external event. Remember the, I think this is true for last night's sauna. Anything that happens in the sauna stays in the sauna. Okay. It's not the same with PowerPoint. Everything that happens in the slide does not have to stay in the slide. Okay. And by the same token, everything that happens outside of the slide, we should also kind of make sense of it. Also, allows you to be a little bit funny. You kind of pretend, whoa, wait a second, what happened to my slide? Why is funny important? It's actually much easier to remember something that made you laugh than something that made you, cry, maybe not. But I don't get very good evals when I make them cry. So. Let's have a look at a practical event, a practical example, excuse me. I'm going to take one particular scenario that you might be familiar. Who delivers the Windows server curriculum? Sorry, I was checking something. Okay, pretty much everyone? Somewhat expected that. Okay. Have you seen that slide before? Okay, what is this? What is this slide about? ADFS, right? Okay. Have you gone through the slide? One of the few animated slides that, that Microsoft provides us. Kind of helpful. What does the process of ADFS look like? A tennis match between Nadal and a wall. Look, you go there, then it says something, then it goes over there, then it goes over back to that one, which then calls that one, which then calls another one, which calls this one, which then refers back to that one. And then, since we were lacking, we had too many arrows, what we did is we just kind of, boop. Did you see that? Boop. You kind of have to catch it, okay? And then another boop, and another boop, and we're done. 11 steps, okay? Do you have any idea what happened? Nope. Nothing, okay. Now, there is one problem here. Can I modify that slide? Yes. Okay, this is mock. Sorry? Not easily. Okay. You probably know this slide too. So I guess everyone in this room is called instructor name. Okay. That should be, I mean, I think everyone has then changed the slide to something. Be careful, however, because that's it is a valid point. As you know, the mock is copyrighted material. If you read your EULA, you know the stuff that you never read? There is a mention that you can put your own content in it, but you have to clearly specify that it is not Microsoft and they're not responsible. Okay. They would not want to take any responsibility for something that's better, I guess, or don't know. Good point, yeah. I seem to remember a number of 25%, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't forget, we also have our custom courseware, which allows a lot of modification, but that's in removing different modules, not in really adding contents. And I'm not suggesting that you do anything that is illegal or not required, but when Karen tells us that they're not enforcing the quality requirement of MCTs, I doubt severely that there is someone at Microsoft that's kind of counting slides on every MCT presentation. Okay. That doesn't mean that because they're not enforcing it, we should cheat. But my point being is, yeah, you can change your slides. Now, I don't very often do mock modification. Did anyone modify their mocks outside of putting the name? Okay. A little bit, yeah, kind of same 5 to 10%. Okay, that must be the finished site for about 5 to 10%, I guess. Okay, yeah. I do enough custom slide decks that I don't find myself called upon to make modifications to the mock courseware. So let's have a look. We were looking at this one. Whip, whip, whip. Should we put sounds in our slides? Do you think that it would make the slide a bit more understandable if we had a little whip? Okay. I just read an article that there is a sound on the iPhone or something like that, where basically one of the Apple engineers, they needed a sound, and made some kind of strange beep, and then played with his computer and re-recorded it and modified it, but you're basically listening to an Apple engineer going kind of wild at night after a very long day of work. So I can't remember exactly which one, but it's one that we hear regularly. Okay, so first modification here. Couple of things that I've done just without any changes. Can you see any difference? Yep, added. Okay, so change the color. And just put my logo so that it's kind of clear that it's my stuff, Microsoft is not responsible for it, and put my copyright at the bottom just to be on the safe side. Okay, that's just that. The other thing is if you look at the previous version, sorry, I'm keeping on jumping back and forth, the Federation Trust, we've got this big blue arrow, which could confuse people that they might not understand whether that's part of the process or not. So what I decided to do is move it at the top so it's clearly out of the way and use a different color, different shape for it. Also use two different colors to show the Adatum Corporation versus Trey Research so that we're a bit clear. Kind of gimmicky for the time being. In fact, if you look at the slide, there's a lot more that took place because I renamed in the selection pane all of the different processes and did a couple of corrections. It's actually funny, not because PowerPoint is a Microsoft product or because Microsoft does ADFS should you think that their slides are perfectly built. So there were a couple. If you go in this one, you notice the resource in the Account Federation server. Any one of us would just create one text block and put the different titles there. No, what they decided is there is one text block for the other one and then one for Federation server so that I guess they could copy it. Okay. Remember the different numbers I was showing you in the previous slide? How do you like Freeform 534? Yeah, that sounds like a Franz Kafka kind of book, or you know, the 1984. There's a bunch of arrows and this stuff. The text, the pictures of the different servers are not grouped together with the labels, different things. Okay. Another little thing that I changed. I don't know if you noticed, but here when we go look at point 5, it's on the right-hand side of the slide, whereas the query to the Active Directory that follows on is then going to be on the left-hand side. So they kind of switched sides. Okay. Second thing they did is their arrows were not big enough. So they created arrows which are a curve plus the arrowhead. Okay. Which means that you cannot make certain changes. There are certain animations that will just not function on that particular slide if you go about and modify it. So let's go back to first version of the slide and renamed all of the different steps. Also, by the way, it doesn't need to be a mock manual. It's just a description. So as long as you understand what step 6 is or how it relates to the description, or where am I on the stuff, it's perfectly okay to just have Adatum label or boundary without having to explain that it's an Active Directory domain or anything like that. It just needs to make sense to you. And sometimes you just happen to forget to rename some of the stuff. So first thing, renamed everything. Regrouped the servers. As you can see, then now one group, which represents the label, the icon, and makes it much easier for me to change it. Another reason why this is important is you notice that you have your connection points here. So if you have arrows, when you draw a new arrow, you can say, okay, connect to one of those connection points, and it will follow the shape if you move the shape around. Okay, so an important thing to remember on that aspect. So rename this one, change the slides, the arrow to a full regular arrow on the system. Let's have a look at what that means. First, now, notice that I can define a path, a way where the process is going to communicate. So we follow the path a bit better than just something that fades in. Second thing, and I've kept the step numbers because I thought that was a good idea. Got a response, grayed out the previous one. So you have the choice of either deleting the previous one, which most people tend to not do, or grayed out or hide it to show people as you're going through the process, where's the focus right now? Okay, because if I go back to, whoops. That looks a bit like a Western with the attack of the fort by the Indians at one point. Huh? So, I show the direction. Something happens. I get a response. Grayed out the previous one. And I move on through the steps. So as you can see, it has not changed much. I've made the lines a bit bigger. I've changed the color to make them a bit more visible and go through the process one step at a time. If we look at the, I'm just going to go through the entire process. Sorry? What? Well, good point. What are the different colors? Very good. I was wondering if someone was going to notice. Can someone tell me what the difference was? Exactly. On one hand, we're basically doing your Active Directory Federation queries, so you're dealing with HTTPS queries, and the second part, SAML and things like that. This is now going to be a LDAP query, Kerberos authenticated LDAP query to the Active Directory system. Okay, I cannot take any credit for that. That actually is in the original slide. So yeah, they do get it right from time to time. Okay. But thank you, Ronald. I was wondering if someone was going to catch that. Yeah, different color on the system. And notice something else that happens here. I'm back to blue, so I'm back to ADFS internal process, but I've got a little something that comes in. Actually, a security token, yeah, a SAML security token. Okay. This is also where it helps me out because I colored Tray Research in gray. Green. I'm needing new glasses, I guess. In green, so I can see that this particular security token was issued by the Tray Research. As the system then contacts back the ADFS on the other side, I can see it's going to use the security token that was given by its own account federation server over to the resource partner, and that one will validate, trust it, and return its own security token back to the client. The client can then use that security token. And the fact that I changed the two colors between Tray and Adatum allows people to understand, okay, where are they trusted? Where do they mean something? Is this an improvement? Okay. If I give you the slide in 10 days and you're not experts on ADFS, would it still make sense? You think so? I wouldn't, and I did the slide. So let's look at another alternative, okay? I said we should do graphics. That doesn't mean we can't explain them. And when Microsoft puts animation in their slides, very often they do not put an explanatory text. Now, obviously the text is going to be in your mock manual. That doesn't mean that you can't repeat it on the slide, because we've got 11 different steps here. So it makes it much easier for someone who revisits the slide, or more importantly, as an assistance to reading the text, to follow the different steps. So what I can do is explain every single step as it goes through the process. And obviously, I am doing, client makes HTTPS request to TrayFS. That's not something that you can say to anyone that they will understand, okay? So they will still have to read the text, but it will help them follow on the process. Let's have a look at the internals of the, sir? I'll come to that in a second. Okay, thanks for the question. Please don't forget, why am I asking you to remember to ask a question? I forgot I was dealing with, sorry, Luke. So if we come back to the process, you can see the selection pane gets quite long. Okay, one thing that I want to point out is by properly naming things and giving them names that match. Notice here, I have my DC response, which is step 6, so I can have the description and the step attached to it. And I reorder them in the process in the way they're going to happen, which makes it much easier for me that when I move now over, not to the selection pane, but to the animation, when I was redoing the slides last night, really late last night, really early this morning, once I did the first couple of steps, it was just a question of drag and dropping, and I was basically putting animations without knowing what I was animating on the slide, because the labels helped me find out and understand. So I knew that if it was the first one for the request, that one had to happen after the last one, so it's after previous, and then I would repeat that by a click to delete it, or I'm sorry, to change the color afterwards. Couple of other things here, and I guess that's kind of part of the basics, but when you do animations on PowerShell, get to know the tool. For us, for a lot of us, PowerPoint, did I say PowerShell? I need to stop delivering so many courses in so many different topics, I guess. If you're going to use PowerPoint, for most of us, PowerPoint is a reader application. It is something where you have some type of content and you just present it, you don't modify it. As soon as you start modifying it, get to learn the tool. There's a lot of different things that will help out in the process. So first thing here is the animation. Let's take one of the arrows on this one there. When we add an animation or select an arrow, and okay, because I've got multiple ones. So I'm going to select on this one. Each effect will have its own options. And for example, define the directionality. Okay. Yeah, it will work. But taking an arrow and turning it 180 degrees because you don't know that you can change the directionality, that's a bit too much work. By the same token, if I have my security token being moved, so I can select here, would have to zoom in. It's one of that one here. One thing they did in 2013 is that when you slide it, it shows actually the object, which was a bit of a problem in 2010 to align it to where it used to be. But the same thing here. Notice that your effect options will allow you to define exactly which way it's going to go and things like that. If you need to go into more details, although it's a bit of an advanced system, you can go into the different points, and this will allow me to change my arrows in every possible direction. So if you want your security token to do a backflip with a twist and a half before landing in the pool, you can go through that process. By the way, still valid point, but again, less is more. So let's not go crazy. I think some of the times I even think I put too much stuff in my animations, but you know, the effects with the title that swings in, blings and things like that, be careful about it. It should be somewhat subtle. Play also a lot with colors as I did with this one. And as you can see, it was just a question of repeating the same thing over and over again. So you can see that it starts with a click. The click will actually change the color of the previous step, create a new step, move the token that's aligned with it, or rather fade it out, then move it around as the arrow moves, and then delete it, and so forth, so on. Put the text, the little graphic number, and then the text associated with it. So it makes it quite easy to follow what's going on after a while. So a couple of things regarding the animation. As I said, hiding objects or changing the color or anything like that is as important. Luc was asking a question about printing, which we'll come back to in a second. That's one of the problems. People will tell you don't put animations because they don't print well. We have not yet invented dynamic paper. That's true. We'll talk about SkillPipe in a second, and I'll tell you how I get around that particular problem in a second. However, the fact that it will not look good in paper, for me, is not sufficient reason not to put animations. What's the purpose of a slide, actually, before we go there? Okay, to help you tell the story. Everyone agrees? Valid point. Question was, okay, what's the purpose of a slide? You can do a couple of things. Either you're really dedicated and you're going to do a one last step that is kind of clean up the slide, so change, hide things or whatever so that the primary aspect shows up. Or what you're going to do is you create a non-animated version of your slide and you deliver that one as a PDF or something like that. Okay, but you're then missing the animations, which, personally, I regret. So hiding objects is as important as showing them. I tend to think that you should add text to explain the step. When we've got 11 steps, and anything over 2 steps, you should probably put a description with it. Number them. It helps people follow them. Okay, couple of final words. This is where I'll be talking a little bit about the aspects. Some of the problems that you will encounter is I used a number of graphics on the slide decks. I regularly do. Where do you get them? Steal, borrow, beg. Let's be honest, Bing is a very good tool for that sort of purpose. There's some other product, but I don't think it's going to be very successful down the road, so I'm not going to mention it here. But yeah, Bing for graphics, build your own library. If you go to TechEd, or even if you surf the web, you can download the presentations. All of the Microsoft logo are in one or the other of the presentations that are available from the TechEd's Tech Days and things like that. So that's already something that you can grab, okay? You can use the icons for the visual application for servers, users, computers, and very often you don't even have to go through Visio. You can grab them from an existing Microsoft presentation. However, be careful about one thing, the copyright. And quite honestly, I'm probably not really legal with Wile E. Coyote, but it's just too good a graphic to miss it, okay? And I've been meaning to talk to the person who gives me legal advice on how I should. The problem is they don't make it very simple for you to figure out and to pay copyright. I'd be more than happy because I've been using it a few times. Good point. So just to repeat, the suggestion, which is a very good one, is to use a source, even on a separate slide, say sources, specify where they are from. The only problem with that is sometimes when I go on the internet and grab things from there, the source is not quite clear, and it might be a third or fourth generation system. But yeah, that's something I want to be aware. Now, to answer specifically to Luke's question about what do you do about printing, I don't. And I know that my opinion on that is slightly different than a number of people that present, but I tend to deliver every single one of my presentation as a PowerPoint show, protected in editing with a password. Now, that doesn't protect me at all from someone who will go into the slide, open it in PowerPoint, in read-only, copy items from the slides, and copy it. I don't have an issue with that. Let's be honest. This is just my interpretation of something which is public knowledge. I'm not giving any secret information. It is not my own development. It is something that I have to accept. It's Microsoft that developed it, so in a way, it doesn't really own it. I don't really own it. What I do own is the way that it is being presented. Now, that's why I put a disclaimer at the beginning. That's why I put the disclaimer in the properties. If someone wants to cheat, they will cheat. If someone is honest, they will contact you and ask you, is it okay if I use your slide? And in fact, if you read the disclaimer, this one is the one I use for the IMCT presentations I make, and basically, if you're a member of IMCT, you have the right to reuse any of my IMCT presentation as long as you attended the initial presentation or whether you're the IMCT country lead. I do the same thing when I do training for Microsoft partners. As long as you attended the original training or that you are in MCT, you can redeliver those slides. I can actually trust you guys to be able to deliver Microsoft partner training. Okay, left some time here. If there were any other questions or things that you've encountered and problems, Ronald. Right. Okay. So actually, thank you for pointing that out, because that was something I was thinking about mentioning. The nice thing about templates is they adapt everything to the destination theme. The bad thing about templates is they adapt everything to the destination theme. So you're going to have your different colors. You have two ways of doing it. Either you do like I did and you cheat, and you use the source theme. Okay. Now, I felt that I could do it in this particular presentation because my point was talking about presentations I had made. So I didn't need to readapt to the theme. If you are including them from inside thing, unfortunately, you kind of have to go through the process of recoloring, readapting. These themes are rather important because I think it is important indeed to try to stick with the colors of the theme. Notice that there is very little red in presentation. Okay, the template that Sammy gave us is in the blue, so I tried to stick with the blues, bleu royal in French, the king's blue we call it, and the greens. Okay, so the process is not easy. Denise, do you have any suggestion? Because anything on PowerPoint. Okay, so if I go here into the slide master, what you can see is there is the slide master from the particular presentation that Sammy gave us, and Denise's suggestion on that point is here you will see the other master and only the slides I needed from the other presentation, but she's suggesting of doing something which is kind of intermediate, I guess, where you will have your own colors and things like that to kind of adapt it. That's actually a good idea. I might use it. Thank you. Does that answer a little bit? Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a, I had the experience, some of know, it seems that as far as animated presentation, it's my IPv6 presentation that people have seen or come across on it, and that one was initially designed on a 16 by 9 because I was tech ed, and I've had to readapt it by 4 by 3, which is when I found out that cramming 128 bits into a 4 by 3 is really tough. So, but yeah, you need to cram the stuff. You can try to, what I do on times like this is, it can be difficult to grab all of the objects together, but those that need to work together, you group them together so that they will reduce in size together. And you kind of find yourself with just 3-4 groups that you might reduce, and they reduce properly, and then you displace them so that it fits in the 4 by 3. Now they're talking about a 21 by 9 format, Philips, well, a Dutch company, so it's your fault. Yeah, we're going to deal with. Actually, when I was showing you this slide, the Windows 8 slide, I was hesitating between that one and another one that was 16 by 9, just to show you that sometimes Microsoft they came to the 16 by 9 simply because they've got so much text they want to put on their slides that they need the extra space. Jeshan, I think I saw you ask a question. I do not do a lot of online training. I am happy to have been doing some online training, which I'll be talking in the next session, and I'm so happy about it that I can't stop talking about it. How do I use the animations in the online training? Okay, that might be a software issue. I've had some situations, I'm using Link, and simply because I have access to Link. I don't have access to something else. But regarding animations online, I've had some issues where the link did not follow because basically it works on differential graphics, so it'll suddenly think that it already sent down the pipe. And you either have to restart that particular slide deck, or sometimes a student has to disconnect and reconnect. It's not, as I mentioned, an online training tool. Now, if you have a program that you use for online training that does not support animation, use another one. Yeah, I don't know if anyone has a good suggestion on that one, but I don't know how to get around. Yeah, Seth, you've got a lot of experience with that. He's the one who does a lot of online training. So if I understand, your suggestion is if your application has this limitation, but it's got a kind of a desktop projection system, what you do is you will get away from the PowerPoint projection into the desktop projection and run the animation as it would on the desktop. Okay. Sharing a screen, basically. The other solution, which is not a very good one, but is the possibility of doing a Camtasia recording and sending it to the students as a add-on information or something like that to the presentation. So, but that's kind of asynchronous, so that's not as good or anything like that. Any other questions? Guys, thanks a lot.